Lila was on her knees in the dust, struggling to breathe, her body battered and bleeding. Her ripped cotton dress clung to her skin, drenched in sweat and blood. Her face was streaked with grime and tears. The blistering wind roared across the barren valley, but nothing could drown out her cries. She was only 25, yet in this moment she felt ancient, worn beyond her years. Her ribs throbbed where fists had landed. Her side stung where a blade had sliced. Every part of her body screamed in pain. Bryce and Nolan had left her for dead. They coveted her land. They wanted to erase her family's legacy from the frontier. When she resisted, when she fought with all her strength, they pummeled her until her body collapsed. They mocked her as she fell. They called her foolish. They spat on her face before riding off, certain she'd never stand again. But Lila had stood. Her legs trembled, but her spirit burned fierce. She stumbled through the wild, each step shooting daggers of pain through her flesh. The sun seared her back. The rocky ground clawed at her knees, but she refused to stop. She wouldn't let them win. Her mind replayed the horror. Bryce's hand shoving her into the dirt. Nolan's cold laugh echoing in her ears. The sound of her dress tearing. The crushing weight of fists and boots. She had scratched at their faces, fought until her nails split, and her blood stained their clothes. But they were stronger. 2 men against 1 woman. No one came to her aid. Now every bruise was a testament to her resistance. Every drop of blood was proof she hadn't given in. Yet, alone in this desolate valley, she felt hope fading. The world tilted around her. Her vision grew hazy. Her lips cracked from thirst. She whispered to herself over and over, "Not here, not like this." But her voice was weakening. She sank to the ground, her knees digging into the brittle grass. Her hands clutched the tattered fabric around her waist, desperate to hold onto her pride. Her breathing grew faint, her body shook, her swollen eye barely open as she gazed at the horizon. Then she saw him, a rider in the distance, a horse charging across the valley. For a moment, her heart froze, fearing the monsters had returned to finish her. Her stomach knotted, but as the figure neared, she saw something unexpected. Not malice, not cruelty, but compassion. The rider halted, leapt from his horse, and ran to her side. He was older, his face weathered by years under the sun. His voice was low, urgent. "Hold on. You're safe now." Lila couldn't trust so quickly. Her lips quivered. Her voice was a faint murmur. "Take the cloth off." Caleb froze. He'd seen wounds before, cattle mauled by coyotes, men torn by gunfire, but nothing prepared him for this. As he lifted the frayed fabric at her waist, his jaw clenched, his breath caught. Her body was a map of bruises, cuts, and burns. Every mark told a tale of brutality. Every scar demanded justice. Lila's eyes met his. She was shattered, but her spirit blazed. She wasn't seeking pity. She was demanding belief. The rancher's heart pounded as the desert wind howled around them, and the question burning in both their minds was clear. Would he stand with her and fight for justice, or would he ride away, letting evil run free? Caleb kept staring at Lila's wounds, his stomach heavy with dread. This was no simple brawl. This was cruelty, pure and raw. He pulled a canteen from his saddle and held it to her lips. Lila drank, water spilling down her chin, her hands trembling as she gripped the metal. Her voice broke when she finally spoke. "They tried to take it all. My land, my father's land." Caleb's jaw tightened. He'd seen greed before, men killing for a patch of dirt. But this was different. This was a woman broken for daring to stand firm. Lila coughed, her breath uneven. They said I was worthless, that no law would protect me. They wanted me to sign. When I refused, they beat me until I couldn't stand." Her eyes shone, not with defeat, but with a fire that refused to fade. "I'll never give it to them. Never." Caleb placed a calloused hand on her shoulder, careful not to touch her bruises. "You're safe now. I won't let them near you again." His words were calm, but inside his heart raced. He was just one man, weathered and worn, but something in Lila's defiance stirred him. She tried to stand, wincing in pain. Caleb caught her before she fell. Even broken, Lila's spirit was as untamed as the frontier itself. She muttered through gritted teeth, "They'll come back for me. They always do." Caleb helped her onto his horse, steadying her with one arm as he swung up behind. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in crimson and gold. It should have been beautiful, but all Caleb saw was danger lurking in the shadows. He knew Bryce and Nolan. Men like them didn't forget. They'd hunt her until they got what they wanted. Lila leaned against him, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't even know me. Why would you help?" Caleb's eyes narrowed as he guided the horse toward town. "Because no one deserves what they did to you, and because if men like them keep winning, this land ain't worth living in." The horse galloped through the tall grass, hooves thundering like a call to battle. Caleb felt Lila's weight against him, fragile yet unyielding. He thought of the sheriff, of the law, but also of how easily the law bent in these parts. Sometimes justice needed a stronger hand. As the lights of Willow Creek flickered in the distance, Caleb knew one thing. He wasn't just helping a stranger. He was stepping into a fight that could cost him everything. But what choice did he have? Caleb was leading Lila toward the sheriff's office, hoping the law could shield her. But before they reached the building, two figures blocked their path outside the tavern. Bryce and Nolan stood there, smug grins spreading across their faces. The street grew quiet, townsfolk stepping back as tension brewed in the warm evening air. Caleb had no choice but to guide Lila inside the tavern, where every eye could witness what was about to unfold. Lila pulled Caleb's coat tighter around her bruises, but her eyes still burned with defiance. She refused to cower, even battered. She wanted the world to see she was still standing. Caleb was about to step outside when the tavern doors swung open. The room fell silent. Bryce and Nolan sauntered in, their smirks spreading like venom. They spotted Lila instantly. "Well, look at that," Nolan sneered. "The girl's still breathing." Caleb stood, fists tightening, ready to protect her. But before he could move, Lila rose, her body swaying, her legs unsteady. Yet her eyes locked onto the men who'd tried to destroy her. Her body begged her to collapse, but her pride pushed her forward. "You think I'll kneel to you?" she shouted, her voice ringing through the tavern. "You'll never take my land." Gasps filled the room. She grabbed a half-empty whiskey bottle from a table and hurled it. It shattered against the wall inches from Nolan's head, shards scattering across the floor. The tavern erupted in chaos. Bryce lunged, but Caleb caught him with a solid punch to the jaw. Chairs toppled, men scrambled. The fiddle player dove for cover. Nolan tried to push past, but Lila stepped forward, planting herself between him and Caleb. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her voice was steady. She knew she couldn't win against them, but standing tall kept her dignity alive. "You'll have to go through me." That moment froze everyone in the tavern. a battered young woman, standing defiant against two ruthless men. No one laughed now. Even the cowhands at the bar muttered, "She's got more grit than most men here." The sheriff burst in, rifle in hand. The townsfolk spoke up immediately, every witness ready to tell the sheriff exactly what had happened. Within minutes, Bryce and Nolan were dragged out, cursing and spitting, but their smirks were gone. The tavern slowly returned to its usual noise, though every eye remained on Lila. They'd seen something that night, not weakness, not fear, but the raw courage of a woman who refused to break. Caleb helped her back to a table, pride swelling in his chest. For the first time, he realized Lila wasn't just someone to protect. She was someone worth standing beside, no matter the cost. Now, before we dive deeper into this tale, if you're loving these stories of courage and heart from the frontier, hit that subscribe button. It keeps these stories alive for all of us. Oh, and while you're here, grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let me know. What time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? The night after the tavern brawl, Bryce and Nolan were hauled in chains through the dusty streets of Willow Creek. The whole town gathered, whispers spreading like brush fire. Folks leaned against railings, women clutched their children, and old men grumbled that justice was finally catching up. The sheriff marched them toward the courthouse, a small wooden building that smelled of cedar and dust. Inside, the benches groaned as townsfolk filled every seat. Caleb sat close to Lila, steadying her when she flinched from her bruises. Her chin was high, her eyes sharp. She'd been beaten, but not broken, and everyone in the room could feel it. When the judge entered, silence fell. He was an older man with weary eyes, but his voice carried authority. "Bryce and Nolan, you stand accused of assault, attempted theft, and trying to drive this young woman off her rightful land. How do you plead?" Bryce smirked. "Not guilty." Nolan grinned beside him, cocky as ever, but the sheriff stepped forward, his voice booming. "I saw them in the tavern. I saw this girl hold her ground, and I saw Caleb here defend her. The whole town saw it." The judge turned to Lila. Her hands shook as she stood, but her voice held firm. "They tried to crush me. They wanted my father's land. I told them no, and I'll keep saying no." The crowd murmured, a wave of support filling the room. For a moment, Bryce and Nolan's grins faltered. Caleb stood, his voice rough but steady. "I've lived in these parts for 55 years. I've seen men fight for water, cattle, silver, but I've never seen a woman fight like this one. If this land means nothing to the law, then what does?" The words hit hard. The judge leaned back, gavel in hand. The verdict came quickly. "Bryce and Nolan, you are guilty. You'll face prison for your crimes, and this town will remember your names for what you are, cowards who prey on the strong." Applause roared through the small courthouse. Lila's eyes welled with tears, not from pain, but from relief. For the first time since her ordeal began, she felt safe. Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're free now. They can't hurt you anymore." But as the gavel struck one last time, Lila's heart raced. Justice had been served today, but what would tomorrow bring for a wounded woman and an aging rancher alone in the wild frontier? When the courthouse emptied and the crowd drifted home, Lila and Caleb stepped into the fading light. The sky glowed with streaks of orange and purple, the kind of sunset only the West could conjure. For the first time in days, Lila took a deep breath without fear gripping her chest. Caleb walked beside her, silent at first, his boots crunching on the gravel road. Finally, he spoke. "You stood taller than any man in there today. Don't ever forget that." Lila smiled faintly, her face still bruised but her spirit shining. "I thought I was alone. Turns out I wasn't." They reached his horse and paused. The town behind them hummed with life, but the open land stretched quiet and vast on the horizon. Caleb looked at her, seeing not just a wounded woman, but a partner in strength. He'd spent years believing the West had taken more than it gave. But in that moment, he realized the land could still offer something. Hope. Lila placed a hand on his arm. "You gave me more than safety. You gave me a reason to keep fighting." The rancher, weathered and worn, felt something stir inside him. Not the fire of youth, but the steady warmth of purpose. He knew life was harsh, even cruel, but it could still surprise you with grace. As they rode out together, the town fading behind, Lila leaned against him, not from weakness, but from trust. The West was brutal, yes, but it was also a place where second chances could grow. And maybe, just maybe, love could rise from the ashes of pain. Their story reminds us of something simple yet profound. No matter how broken you feel, you can rise again. Even when the world tries to take what's yours, you can stand tall and fight back. And sometimes, help comes from the last place you expect. So, I want to ask you, if you were in Lila's shoes, would you have found the strength to fight back? And if you were Caleb, would you have risked your peace to protect a stranger? Before we close this chapter, do me a quick favor. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next tale. It means more than you know and keeps these frontier stories alive. And while you're listening, take a sip of your coffee, lean back and tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? Because stories aren't just about the past. They're about connecting us, right here, right now.